Hey y'all, so this is Brett here in North Carolina. I'm sitting on my porch on a cool morning. My wife got up early today because she needed to take her mama to a doctor's appointment one town over. And the smell of coffee tends to wake me up, so I woke up and I'm sitting here all by myself. And our pets are off somewhere sleeping, I reckon. Birds are eating bird food out there. Picking out the sunflower seeds first. And I'm doing another spectating and speculating here on the subject of worry. For as long as I can remember, but certainly more so during maybe the last 7 or 8 years, a lot of folks seem to be worried about things. They mostly seem to be worried about money and health. If you listen to them talk, there are some people that just can't wait for another set of ears to show up in order to sort of dominate the opportunity to communicate with a long, detailed, and fraught narrative relating to their health or the cost of things. And of course, health is rather expensive too. And people are worried about that. They're worried about losing something. They're worried about losing their life or losing their possessions. More and more folks are worried about losing their jobs. One of our daughters, the company she works for, decided to shut down the big plant down on the Greensboro end of the county, and so and they happened to let her know that right after she'd moved into a brand new apartment. You know, with the security deposit and all that other stuff that you've got to pony up, and then lo and behold, your job ends in April. And you have some choices, all of which involve a pay cut and going somewhere else. So anyways, she's got things to worry about, but we didn't raise her to worry. We raised her to look at the situation you're in, clear-headed, and make smart choices. And so she's less worried than my wife or I would have been at her age, and seems to be in a position right now where she's going to be in a better situation than she was in. You know, one door closes, another one opens up. And that's cool. And I used to worry a lot. I used to worry a lot when I was using painkillers after my bad leg break. And I used to worry a lot when I kind of drank myself to sleep every single night when I was younger. You know, that went on for a very long time. But if I ever got into a discussion about my health back in those days, you know, because of the narratives that we make up to shield our own choices from scrutiny, I probably wouldn't have said that, you know, substance abuse was at the core of the problem. I would talk about my health rather than make smart choices concerning it. And who likes to listen to someone worry about stuff like that, particularly when there's a solution that might be offered? And I know that guys are really inclined to jump in and fix stuff. That's something I've tried to slow down, the spontaneous impulse to leap in and save the day. It's kind of a guy thing to fix stuff. We drive our wives crazy, thinking that when they're talking to us, they're asking a question about how to fix it. When they're not. They're processing out loud. We're supposed to shut up and listen to it. But at any rate, worrying. And before I retired from teaching, when I was in my glide path, the last 4 years, I got away from teaching middle school, middle grades, mostly English, a little bit of science, a lot of AIG, what they used to call honors, academically and intellectually gifted, I think is what the acronym means. They're always changing up the names of stuff, right? Shell shock, battle fatigue, PTSD. Oh, Lord have mercy. My glide path the last 4 years, I couldn't handle middle school anymore. My gosh, I was almost 60 years old and had been doing it for a real long time. And I was an all-in teacher, which means that you come home from school and you bring the job home in your mind and in your heart, and your family's got to deal with that. Every kid I know that had a teacher for a parent will tell you that they probably don't want to be a teacher. Most of them don't. They want a job that they can leave at the work site and go home and live their life. But at any rate, when I was teaching elementary art at 3 county schools, a semester at the biggest and 2 9-week terms split between the other 2 elementary schools, which were smaller, so none of them kids got a whole year of art. I was supposed to somehow stuff a year's worth of curriculum into each one of those 3 stations I was at. It's amazing the people that end up in educational administration. It's even more amazing today, here in 2025. But, 7 to 10 years ago, our arts and music departments were not funded. They didn't have a budget for supplies. And no one had scrutinized the North Carolina Standard Course of Study for those subjects after a whole bunch of cuts had been made, and they began to create itinerant art teachers that moved from school to school rather than remaining at a school for an entire year. I came in the first year that happened, and it was very interesting. I had some discussions that probably didn't please upper administration when I asked them to do what administrators are supposed to do and solve those challenges, those curricular challenges with short durations and so forth for me. They never did. They got mad at me. Don't ask somebody to do something obvious because they get mad. They feel as though you're telling them they're stupid because this is an obvious thing that you should have seen already. And I suppose in some cases we are telling them they're stupid. If they're not ignorant of it, they're stupid. But that last 4 years teaching art to kids from preschool through 5th grade was lovely. It was fantastic. Kids don't run to class to write essays, take tests, or do math calculations. They just don't, even if they like the subject. But art, gym, and music, and media, what they used to call library, had become a class. And kids really enjoyed those elective classes. They couldn't wait to get to the gym or to the art room or the music room. And we had a lot of fun and very few behavior problems. And I devised a way that I could, at whatever school I was stationed at the beginning of the year, I could create a curriculum that would last that 9 or 18 weeks and then just carry it to the next school and sort of run the kids through very similar lessons, but kind of adapted to where I was and who I was dealing with. And it was really, really fun. And when I was at one of the larger of the elementary schools, Leakesville Spray Elementary, here right in town, bikes ride from my house, one of my colleagues had a poster up and it said, I love this. She had a poster up in her room and it said, worrying is like praying for something not to happen. Think about that. Worrying is like praying for something not to happen. I think that's really true. It's kind of like a corrupted form of prayer. And a lot of people spend more time worrying than they do praying. I think about that quote all the time whenever I'm listening to someone who's a churchgoer or churched and they're worrying out loud. And I'm somebody that's going to listen to a person that seems like they're in distress. I will. I'm a sucker for that. Always have been. And but as I've gotten older, I'm 66 this year. As I get older, I realize that there are some people that would rather live a lifetime as a victim in a broken and yet repairable skin container and suffer because of the choices they're making in life, be they nutritional, how active you are as a person, how you fill your free time. Do you fill it with entertainments and amusements? The word amusement means the muse is gone, okay? And your muse is your imagination and your processing in your mind, right? Dreams are where we process so much of our experience in order that we can get up the next day and step out prepared for that day. So television and sports and gambling and collecting things, buying things to have a collection of them. You might have to build another, let's get biblical, the kind of person that's building another barn or shed behind their house to store their stuff. These people worry a lot. They worry about things that are temporal and finite and don't do anything about it. It's like worrying out loud is a national pastime, being in a state of grievance continuously and presuming that other people are interested in hearing that, because isn't everybody interested in complaining continuously? Sort of seems to be a real common theme, at least where I live, what I observe with my own eyes. Continuous states of grievance are evidence of continuous states of unforgiveness. I don't know. When I was younger, I used to like going to the amusement park and going on rides, right? Bumper cars at the New York State Fair when I was a kid. We lived close enough to ride our bikes there. It was only about 11 miles from the house. Roller coasters and other kinds of fairway rides that they don't even have anymore because they were, quite frankly, super dangerous. And it was a rush, it was a rush to get on these things, right? My God, I remember some of these spinning things that you could get in where when you got on it, you might have had a pocket full of change, and when you got off it, your pockets were empty. It's like the centrifugal force of the dang thing picked your pocket while you were on it. Some of us were smart enough to not go on the ride, but rather to just walk around down below it because we could find quarters all over the place down there. But I wouldn't want to ride those rides all day, every day. The rush of sort of possible danger, right? I don't ski anymore. I can't. I don't have the skeleton for it like I used to. I don't scuba dive anymore because I don't have the lungs for it, and certainly not the leg strength that I used to have. There are many things that young people do that are fun and potentially dangerous. In fact, most of the things young people do are fun and potentially dangerous, and some of them become lifestyles. Speaking of dangerous, there goes the fire department. Those men and women deal with dangerous stuff just as a matter of course, and God bless them. But you get older, and I don't worry about things that much. But I certainly make smarter choices and consider what might happen rather than worry about what might happen. I think about what could happen. If there's a speed bump on the horizon, if I can imagine something that might ought to be avoided, I actively avoid it. When I was younger, I used to concern myself with feelings of loneliness sometimes, because everybody else seemed to have a lot of friends and folks that would hang out with them and listen to them and things. And it wasn't until I got studying the Bible that I realized that friendship is not presented in a positive light in the Bible. We're not encouraged to be friends with anybody. It happens. The woman that lives next door to us, I've been cutting her grass for almost 25 years, older lady. Sang at her husband's funeral when he died. I think of her as a friend. I really do. She's someone that I can talk to about anything. She can give me whatever kind of feedback she wants to. There's never any offense. What a wonderful counselor, frankly, to have someone who lives right next door that you can go to and talk to about stuff. That's a friend. In the whole world, maybe I have 10, and I've lived all over the place. I've got thousands and thousands of acquaintances. I taught about 3,000 kids and met their parents and families. We went to all these different churches, one of which is massive. I've met so many people in my life, traveling around and doing stuff and working and being in the Navy and all that. And I can count the number of actual friends, people that I trust and respect and think of as wise and reliable and honest. That's really important to me. Betrayal's a deal breaker for me. I just pivot and leave. But that's plenty of friends, you know. The Bible doesn't speak very positively about friendship, but it talks aggressively about all of the kinds of behavioral attributes that a person ought to have. And when you think about it, those are the kind of things that you would hope for in a friend. And I find the world pretty dry, arid, and lifeless when it comes to the virtues that are expressed in Scripture, what they call the fruit of the Holy Spirit. You might want to look that up. And you might also want to look up the things that God hates. You look at those two lists, and you're going to be visualizing most of the people in your life and into which of those categories their life fits. It's not your opinion. The Bible's full of very helpful checklists to keep you out of trouble. And all you got to do is just, people hate the word obey, but I think that obedience is a terrific virtue for anybody to give a try, because unless you're being obedient to a beast or a monster or a creep, but being obedient when there is a greater intelligence and wisdom and skill set offering you some of that is usually the best path to getting not burning out your first clutch, as it were. So worrying is like praying for something not to happen. We've got friends and relatives with these closeted addictions. They don't come out of the closet about that. They come out of the closet about other stuff. Absolutely monumentally expensive addictions. You know, the kind of addictions that you could sell a house and burn through the money made on the sale in the time it takes to drive from Ohio to Texas. That kind of addiction. The kind of addiction that would make a child contact their parent who's on a fixed income, elderly parent, always asking for money. Even though there were several incomes in that person's home, they have no mortgage. And in a place where there's like twice as much money coming in every month as the retired mother is getting in her old age, somehow that money just vanishes every month. And mama has to endure another phone call about the troubles they're having between now and when they get their tax return or something. And nobody has the courage to say, you need to deal with this drug addiction, the thing we don't talk about. And no, I can't send you that money. And I think you need to start getting some income from your working children who are living in that house and stuff, rather than worrying about whether you can afford the things that you believe you need. Don't worry about it. Change your life. Change your life. Don't worry about your life. Change your life. Acknowledge the illness that comes from bad choices and make different choices. You know, you think about all those stages of grief, right? The person has to acknowledge that you got to acknowledge the problem before you can ever get through the problem. And if you can't acknowledge a problem in yourself, that's the beginning of the fall right there. Too prideful to say I'm broken. Too prideful to realize that you're taking advantage of someone else. You're taking advantage of their love for you, their concern for you, and yet phrasing it in a way that makes all of your troubles appear inevitable and as though they come from outside of you. I'm calling BS on that stuff, okay? Other people are worrying about you for good reason. You need a cosmic dope slap. A real cosmic dope slap. Stop playing the victim. You're the master of your life. You can choose the right thing, you can choose the wrong thing, but either way you chose. You could choose to go to hell by living a life where all you do is pray for things not to happen that are the consequences of the choices you've made, or you can avoid hell on earth and the shame, think about it, that comes with lying about a drug addiction, an alcohol addiction, a credit card use addiction that gets you into a world of hurt. Never talk about that. You need a cosmic dope slap. Mama's not always going to be there. Mama's not always going to be there. And then what are you going to do? Because I guarantee you, if you don't start climbing the ramp that leads to at least some sobriety in your life, you are certainly going to slip down a slippery slope into the most horrible situation you've been in yet. It's going to get worse. We love you folks that worry all the time, but we sure don't want to hear you claim that it's happening to you. You are happening to you. You are happening to you.